Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here for ellenhudson.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today we are talking about next level crafting, and I am sharing 8 ways to add dimension and dimensional effects to your card making projects. And I'm going to be sharing these 4 cards with you. And I have a color palette kind of picked out. I was kind of going with a rainbow theme, but I kind of added just a little bit of a twist on that rainbow theme. So you can see the ink swatches that kind of inspired my color palette. And then I went into my cardstock stash and picked out colors that kind of coordinated with those ink colors. So I'm going to start out and we're going to get right into these techniques. And I'm starting out with heat embossing. Now, this is an old faithful method for adding some dimension, but I'm going to show you how you can pop it up to the next level. So I have die cut this cloud using the Essential Clouds die set from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I have this Happy Birthday to You stamp. This is from the Essentials by Ellen cake stamp set. And I am going to heat emboss this right onto the cloud. I'm prepping the cloud with a little bit of a powder tool, and then I'll ink up the stamp using some Versamark ink and stamp that onto the cloud. Then I will grab my Brutus Monroe Sterling embossing powder and sprinkle that over the top of this sticky clear ink. And then I will heat set that until all of the little graininess goes away, so it's nice and smooth. Now this is nice and dimensional, but I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna put it back into my Misty stamping tool, stamp right over the top of that sentiment once again, sprinkle on some more embossing powder, and I am going to heat set this again. And this really just adds to the dimensional effect of this embossing powder by doubling up the layers of embossing powder. It looks really cool. So now I have that piece ready for my card. And now I'm using this rainbow card die set from the Essentials by Ellen line to create a card base, and as well as die cut all of the cardstock that I need to create these rainbows. Now there are 5 bows on this rainbow and I have 5 colors of cardstock. So I cut that bow die, which I didn't show on the screen, but it has all of these little arches that die cut from it. I cut that out of each color. Now the cool thing about that is now I have enough to make 5 different rainbows. So all in different orders, but I have 5 different rainbows kind of ready to go. And I went through and kind of sorted them out, and you can see that now I have a lot of rainbows ready for different card projects, and I can use them in different ways. I don't have to just use them on this rainbow card base. So I have different iterations here. This is a look at that bow die here, or the details of this rainbow that I die cut from those colored cardstocks. And this time I'm die cutting it from some white cardstock, and I'm keeping all of those pieces together. And that brings us to our second technique for adding dimension to your card projects by stacking up die cuts. So I'm going to use this technique quite a few times in today's video on the various cards because I think this is a great way to add some dimension to card projects. So you can see I have all of these pieces together. I'm going to hold them together with a little bit of score tape here at the bottom, just so that they're all secure and they don't wiggle out away from each other. And I am going to stack 2 of these rainbows on top of each other. This is going to give my entire rainbow a little bit of dimension, a little bump up off the card. But I'm going to also take that 3rd bow, which I have cut from grapefruit cardstock on my colored rainbow there to the left. And I am going to stack 2 more layers of white cardstock behind that particular color to add a little more height to just that piece on the rainbow. So I'll get varying dimensions on this rainbow card. It's a lot of fun, and it's an easy way to do it, and it's a great way to use up scrap white cardstock that maybe you stamped on the back of and it didn't work out. So you can see I'm taking this grapefruit colored bow here. I'm adding a little bit of liquid adhesive on the back of it and stacking up 2 more white die cuts behind it. I just like to use my fingers to kind of push the edges together to make sure everything's lined up. And then I will add the 3rd piece behind that. Now, once I have that all done, I will begin adhering all of the colors to that white rainbow base there. Now, that is not the card base. Those are actually die cuts of these same bows that I'm using for the colored pieces. And you're going to see this all come together in the completed card. So because I have the score tape already on this rainbow base here, I'm going to just remove that score tape and start placing these bows in place. Now you can add a little bit of liquid adhesive like I'm doing here, because that's going to allow it to kind of slide around as well, so you can kind of work it into place. That score tape is pretty sticky, and if you put this down in the wrong spot, you're not going to be able to kind of scoot it or slide it into place. So I like to add a little bit of liquid glue to it so that I can make sure that I get it right in the right spot. So now I'm going to just speed this up just a little bit because this is a lot of assembly. But as I kind of work through my rainbow and I finish it up, you'll see that I have just a little bit of added dimension behind this rainbow. And when I put it on my card base, it's going to just give it a little bit of bump, a little bit of shadow, and add to the interest of the card. Now to create the card base, I have 2 of the bases die cut from some white cardstock, and I'm going to take one of those and place it on my scoring board and add a score line about a 1/2 inch from the top, and I'm going to fold that over and add a little bit of score tape just above the score line. Then I'll adhere these 2 pieces together, and that gives me my folding rainbow shaped card base. Now let's move on to technique 3, and that is creating your own DIY springs. And this is really easy to do. I have some Essentials by Ellen clear plastic here, and I've put it into my scoreboard here, and I'm scoring every 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to make 3 score lines like this. So I will have one at a 1/4 inch, one at a 1/2 inch, and one at 3/4 inch. Then I'm going to take this out of my scoreboard and I am going to fold in opposite directions along each of these score lines. Now, it is a little like it wants to resist you at first, but you can get these folded on the score lines. And what that's going to leave me with is a little kind of spring here. It looks kind of like a W. I'm going to cut off the excess there that's hanging out the edge because I don't need that. But you can see I'm just folding Mountain Valley, and reinforcing with my little Teflon bone folder here. And once I cut off the excess, you'll see I have this little kind of W shape. Now, I realize this doesn't look like much at this point, but they actually function really well as your own DIY spring. And the great thing is that they're clear, so you can't really see them a lot from the side when you look at them, but they will compress down so that when you put objects into an envelope, they kind of press down, but they'll spring back up when you take them out of the envelope. So in order to adhere my DIY spring to my cloud, I'm going to add some score tape to the 2 flat ends. So I have the outside edges or the outside ends that I'm adding some score tape to, and I'm just ripping those off. Now this is a really long piece and I don't need this much. So I'm just going to cut this down into about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch pieces here. And then I have the rest that I can put aside and use on another project. So I like to make a little bit of this at a time, and then I have it ready to go. So I'll just remove the backer from the score tape here and place this onto my rainbow. I'm going kind of on either side of that grapefruit piece that's in the middle that has a little more dimension, because I don't really want to put anything on top of that since it's at a different dimension than the rest of my rainbow. And once I have those in place, I will remove the adhesive backer from the top of my little DIY spring there, and I will place the cloud right on top of these little acetate springs. So you can see I'm just pressing that down, and I'll show you this from the side here. See how you really don't see the springs because they're clear, but I can press this down and it will compress nicely. But because that acetate has a lot of weight to it, it will spring back up when I take it out of the envelope. So I've adhered my rainbow to the card base, and that is my first card today with our first 3 techniques for next level crafting. So let's move into our 4th technique. Now this is really easy. It's been around for forever, but sometimes we forget about these things. So I'm just bringing them back to mind. And that is using an embossing folder. So as many of you may know, I've shared it over on my YouTube channel. I use a little bit of a different die cutting sandwich for my Gemini Junior. And so I wanted to show you the sandwich that I used for this embossing folder today. So I have a clear cutting plate, a green double-sided die cutting plate from the Gemini Junior collection, my embossing folder with the cardstock, and then the plastic shim from the normal die cutting sandwich. And I ran that through my Gemini Junior and that worked really well. And I really love all the texture and dimension that you can get with the embossing folders that are on the market now. So now I have 3 colors of cardstock here, and I am die cutting the H, the B, and the D from the Classic Block Alpha die set from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I'm going to use these for the happy birthday portion of my sentiment, but before I place them onto my card front, I'm going to stack them up. Now, I told you I would be using this on all of my card projects today, and I really like doing this because I can control the amount of dimension that I place behind each item, which I can't necessarily do with foam adhesive. So this is a great way to add varying kind of depths of dimension to your card, and it also creates a really cool kind of chipboard type effect for your sentiment and your die cuts. So once I have 3 layers of the white stacked together, I'm going to stack the colored cardstock on top. And while we're at it, let's just talk about technique number 5, and that is foam adhesive. Yes, I know it's been around for forever, but a little bit of foam adhesive behind some objects on your card can really take it from kind of meh to marvelous. So on this particular card, I'm using foam adhesive behind the entire card front, as well as behind the foiled sentiment strip that I have over to my right-hand side right now. This is foiled from the Way with Words hot foil stamp plate from the Essentials by Ellen line and die cut with the sentiment strips die. I've just added some banner ends onto the edge with my scissors, and I'm adhering that with a little bit of foam adhesive. So while the HBD and the Celebrate both have dimension behind them, they are different depths of dimension, which really adds to kind of the wow factor of this card. Now, technique number 6, another one that's been around for forever, but it's a layer of Glossy Accents. This can really add a little bit of domed glossy dimension to anything that you place it over. Now, I don't love to put Glossy Accents over some of the water reactive dye-based inks, but putting it over this cardstock here really adds, like I said, that domed glossy dimension, and it's a really cool effect. I love how this dried. So now we're on to card number 3 and technique number 7, and that is pastes and gels. Now, a lot of times we buy these and we forget about them. They're in our drawers. I'm guilty as well. But today I'm just using a little bit of the Ranger texture paste to add kind of a fluffy texture to this die cut cloud. Now you can use textures and pastes with stencils, but today I'm just using a little tonic spatula to kind of smear it and fluff it onto this cloud. I don't have any better way of explaining it. And I really want it to have a lot of texture. Now I grabbed a little Post-it here to hold on to my cloud while I'm adding all this texture paste so I didn't put my finger into it. And before I set it aside to dry, I'm gonna grab some Prisma glitter and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top. So when this dries, it will not only have all of that fluffy texture, but it will have the glitter in it as well. And I think it's so much fun, especially for a cloud. This could also be fun for like a marshmallow or something, or a cake. And I will tell you that one of my favorite gels is the Tonic Moonstone Glitter Gel. So you can see my cloud here. I'm going to set that aside to dry so I don't stick my fingers in it and mess it up. And then I'm going to work on another portion of the card. So I've grabbed one of those rainbows that I created earlier, and I have this dotted scallops cover plate from Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm just running that through my die cut machine with a piece of white cardstock to add a little texture to my background. And then I am going to adhere my rainbow onto my card base using some of the score tape that I placed on it earlier to kind of hold it together. I'm putting it at a little bit of an angle, kind of hanging off the card base, and then I'm going to trim off the excess. And I'm actually going to use that scrap little piece of rainbow on my 4th card. So my 8th way to add dimension is an action wobbler. Now these are a fun little spring. They're not a DIY spring, but they add not only dimension, but a little bit of action to your card as well. So I've removed the adhesive backer from the top portion, and the clear portion is the part that goes onto your card base because it's less obvious than the thicker plastic portion that kind of attaches to the back of your object. So I have the adhesive on there. I can just place that onto my card project, and I have instant dimension and instant movement. It's a great way to add a little fun, unexpected movement to your card. So I have a plain white cloud that I adhered onto the Action Wobbler, and now I'm going to take my texture paste cloud and adhere it right over the top using some liquid adhesive. And for my sentiment, I have die cut the big scripty Happy Birthday die from the Essentials by Ellen line. I've stacked up 2 white die cuts using some liquid adhesive and topped it off with a third die cut that I die cut from some silver cardstock. And I'll just adhere that right over my cloud there with some liquid adhesive. You're going to want to use liquid adhesive on something like this because there is so much texture on the cloud. You want to make sure it sticks well. So that is card number 3 and all 8 ways to add dimension, but I thought I would throw in a bonus card because I had that little scrap of rainbow here and I thought I don't want that to go to waste. So I'm just removing the backer from the score tape that was already on the back of it, and I'm adhering this to a 4 by 5 1/4 piece of white cardstock. I'm just going to line up the straight edge along the bottom. The edges kind of stick over the side, so I'm just going to flip this over and trim off the excess using my scissors. And then I have the All the Feels die. I die cut this 4 times from white cardstock, and once again, I'm stacking them up. Now, if you wanted to use foam adhesive behind this, you totally could, but this stacked die cut technique, it really does give a cleaner look from the side, and it doesn't take too long. You could also use some spray adhesive to adhere these together if you prefer, but sometimes it doesn't bother me to just sit there and stack up die cuts. I don't know what's wrong with me. So I'm going to take those stacked die cuts, place it onto my card front, and I've adhered this on to a top folding A2 size white card base using a little foam adhesive once again. And that finishes off my 4th and final card featuring next level crafting techniques. There's a lot of ways to add dimension and just a little bit of oomph to your card. And I hope these 8 techniques inspired you today. I hope that you will try one of them on your next card project. There's some easy ways to do it, and there's some more complicated ways as well. So let me know in the comments below which is your favorite technique and which is your go-to technique. I would love to hear it. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure to check there. Or you can head on over to the coordinating blog post. I will have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I am so glad you're here. If you enjoyed these projects and this video, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on this YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials shared here. And if you loved this video, I would love it if you would share it with a friend. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to this channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.